No. Kindly do not call me on this number. My colleague must have called you before this. Can you call him back? I will do that just now. Yes. They'll just do it in a minute. Understood. All right. Thank you. Sanjay sir, kindly call
Yeah.
him back and leave a voicemail for him again.
Okay.
He missed it the last time.
Okay.
You have his number, right?
Rahul,
You
the
have
same
his...
number? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I have it. In fact, I reached his office by this number.
No, but we need to call him on his cell phone number, not his office.
That is the problem. So can you please
Yeah. Yes. I'll give you his cell phone number. You
cell
must
phone
have
number?
got the wrong number.
Yeah, that is the problem. Oh,
I will just read
yeah.
it out to you
Of
now.
course.
Just a
Yeah.
minute.
Yeah.
001.
001. Yeah.
Just a second. 248
248
866
866
2959.
2959.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I will leave a voicemail.
Yes. This is the problem.
Rahul, how are you doing?
Very well, sir.
Yeah, Madan Lokur here.
Yes. We've interacted before.
Yeah. How are you doing? All well?
All well, yeah. I'm clerking for Justice Chandrachud this year, actually.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
Yes.
Rahul, I have called him and given the number.
Okay, so we can start, I guess,
Yeah.
because it's 5 past 10.
Let's start.
So, yeah.
Sanjay,
Yes, sir.
Justice Bernstein is already
सर तुमचा एको होतोय आवाज हेलो
Sanjay, Justice
Yeah.
Bernstein is seen on the screen.
Oh, अच्छा, he's seen on the screen.
Yes.
No, it can't. He wasn't going to join.
No,
on
he's
to
something
Google
else.
Meet.
He is somebody else,
Yeah.
sir. He's not Bernstein.
Is it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
He's Justice Gould. Yeah.
Good. Yes. All right.
Okay. Marsha, madam, please start.
Yes, sir. A warm good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you present here. Honorable speakers of today's session, Justice A.K. Sikri, Justice Madan Lokur, Justice Richard Bernstein, Justice Richard Gould, Justice Jaggi, Ronald Gould, and Justice Jaggi. Though in absentia, members of governing body and governing council of Indian Law Society, Ms. Vaijayanti Joshi, Director Academics and Administration, ILS Law College, Dr. Sanjay Jain, Principal, ILS Law College, faculty members, student friends, and dear participants from all over the world. With this galaxy of legal luminaries, I, Ms. Varsha Khandagre, welcome you to this third session of 3-day International Summit on Legal Professionals with Disabilities. I first take the opportunity to wish you all regards on International Day of Persons of Disabilities, which aims to promote the rights and well-being of persons with disabilities in all spheres of society and development, and to increase awareness of the situation of persons with disabilities in every aspect of political, social, economic, and cultural life. I would also take the opportunity to read out the message given by Mr. Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of UN, on this International Disability Day of 2020. He has mentioned that as the world recovers from the pandemic, we must ensure that the aspirations and rights of persons with disabilities are included and accounted for in an inclusive, accessible, and sustainable post-COVID-19 world. This vision will only be achieved through active consultation with persons with disabilities and their respective organizations. With this background, I welcome you all to this session. I also wish you all regards on this Indian National Advocates Day. As we are unable to welcome you physically to our college, we would like to give you a glimpse of ILS Law College work.
Can you please speak once, Justice Bernstein?
Yes, good evening. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Yeah. Can you hear? Now you will be able to hear us also. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
I welcome you, sir. I welcome you, sir, to this session. I would now like to call upon Dr. Sanjay Jain, Principal, ILS Law College, to formally commence the session by his welcome address.
Yeah. I cannot express in words my joy today for having such a wonderful galaxy of speakers. Indeed, it is a stellar panel. And every day, generally, the law of marginal utility is that, the pleasure diminishes with next increment. But here it's the opposite. Pleasure is increasing with each increment. What a wonderful session. How wonderfully we had interactions in last two sessions. First session was dedicated to disability academicians and the likes of Professor Michael Stein, Professor Peter Blank, Professor Mark Harper, Professor Anna Lawson, Dr. Deshpande expressed themselves. In the next session yesterday, we have the likes of Laura Ho, who clerked with Justice Thomas Clarence in US Supreme Court. We had Carol Taylor with her amazing story, how she rehabilitated herself as a lawyer. We had Rungtaji giving his own experiences, how a lawyer can also be activist. And we have David Lepofsky, who narrated his appellate practice in Canada, how successfully he practiced for the last 29 years as a seasoned lawyer. And today, I think, is a special day. Today is first of all, it is a World Disability Day. So I wish everybody World Disability Day. And I'm very happy. It happens very rarely that a non-disabled person wishes somebody disabled day. And my friend Varsha has done this. So kudos to her. This is a great spirit she has shown. Otherwise, celebration of World Disability Day is often tokenistic. Often on this day, we are reminded that how inspiring we are, right? How we set examples for others, etc., etc. But I think World Disability Day is just an occasion, but the occasion has to become a reality, and it should be practiced into a new normal. I will speak more about World Disability Day later in the evening. But today, let me just shed light on the summit. Honorary Secretary of ILS Law College and Director Academics and Administration, Joshi Madam, my colleagues at ILS Law College, members of the governing council and the society, invited guests, invited speakers, student friends, ladies and gentlemen. Really, it gives me a great pleasure to again welcome you on the third day and the penultimate session of this particular summit. Now, Article 31 of UNCRPD very clearly says that disability disaggregated data has to be collected, and one of the disability disaggregated data pertains to disabled lawyers and disabled judges. Do we have a world database? Have we maintained any record about the number of disabled judges occupying offices around the world? Unfortunately, the answer is no. Similarly, Article 8 of UNCRPD very clearly says that we have to raise awareness about the productivity of PWDs. We have to convey very clearly the strong message to the mainstream of the society that disability is just one of the markers of diversity. It is not different from, or it is not other of the able. Disabled is not the other of the able, right? Disabled and able, they are the two sides of the same coin. I think I have to also emphasize that interdependence has to be embraced as a new norm, right? Particularly after the pandemic. I think, and why we need pandemic, I wonder, to remind us that how interdependence plays a crucial role. How interdependence plays a role is realized when now we are trying to be connecting with one another for having a vaccine, right? But I think same kind of interdependence has to be emphasized in celebrating the differences, in celebrating diversity. I think only one mantra which can really make a lot of difference is this: that nothing about us without us. Let the persons with disability decide about their potential. Let us not indulge in binary disabled versus non-disabled. Let's not really insist that non-disabled can take decisions about disabled. It's not that non-disabled do not have the concern for the disabled. But the point which I want to impress upon you is this: that let disabled exercise their right of self-determination. Let disabled realize that they are also equal human beings. And I think, to be blunt, let's not kill anybody with kindness, right? If you want to revitalize the life, then please have empathy rather than sympathy. I think as we are reaching towards the end of this summit, we are also planning to roll out what we call Pune agenda, so that this summit does not become a run-of-mill tokenistic program, right? But this program is carried forward, and believe me, this is merely a miniature version of our dream. Next, definitely sooner or later, and if possible, only next year, we would have a much more diverse and larger summit to accommodate diversity in real sense, and we'll have more. We will try to represent the variety of disabilities in this summit. So I think, without taking much time, let me pause here and thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, sir, for giving us important points for further deliberations at this session. I would now like to request Advocate Rahul Bajaj to inform us about the background relating to this theme.
Sure. Thanks very much, Varsha ma'am. Hi, everyone. My name is Rahul. I'm very excited to welcome you to this session here today. Let me first say a couple of sentences about the summit that we've been having, and then about this particular session and what we hope to achieve out of it. So, in conversations about diversity and access in India, we realized that there was a glaring omission of lawyers with disabilities or legal professionals with disabilities more generally, and it is to remedy this gap that we thought it important to have this summit in order to foster a well considered conversation on what we can do to address the attitudinal, infrastructural, and allied barriers that still remain a painful reality for persons with disabilities, and to give visibility this to give visibility to this forgotten, all too forgotten minority in our profession. And as a part of that, we've had 2 sessions so far, and we also intend to launch a book this evening featuring the interviews of 21 legal professionals with disabilities from 6 different countries. It is called It Can Be Done, IDAP interview series. You will be able to get it on Amazon and buy it for Kindle, reading it on the Kindle. Now, getting to today's session, which is on judges with disabilities. I read an article by Doran Dorfman in the run up to this summit, which really encapsulated the paradox that exists in our profession of what he calls the blind justice paradox. While on the one hand, we consider Lady Justice blind as represented by her wearing a blindfold, which is considered a mark of fairness and impartiality. And at the same time, we consider people who are blind incapable of becoming judges, and that is regarded as an incapacity which disqualifies them. And of course, that's not to say that that's the only disability that where we have this problem, but that just goes to show how much more work there is for us to do. And in India, I know that we are in the presence of 2 former Supreme Court justices, so I have to be careful about what I say. But the judgment of the court, where it was held that in the state of Tamil Nadu, the rule excluding people from becoming judges with more than 50%, 40 to 50% visual impairment, that judgment of V. Surendra Mohan versus the state of Tamil Nadu was a huge letdown for the movement. And it's also our hope that through this conversation, we can help foster a dialogue on how we can alter the structural reality that confronts disabled judges in India today. And we have, and our panelists will be introduced briefly, but we have, really distinguished judges who, whose very presence disproves the notion that being disabled means that you cannot be a judge. We have Judge Ronald Gould, who serves on the US Court of Appeals for the 9th Circuit and has multiple sclerosis. Justice Richard Bernstein, who's blind and serves on the Michigan Supreme Court. Mr. Jaggi is a district judge who has an orthopedic disability. So with that, I won't say anything more, but just express the hope that we will be able to change things through conversations like these. Take a step in that direction at least. Thank you.
Thank you, Advocate Rahul, for setting out the right mood for this session. Today for this session, we have a panel of excellent judges from different parts of the world to take up this issue. All the speakers for today's sessions are stalwarts who actually need no introduction, but I would perform my bounden duty by giving their brief details. Please pardon me if I miss out on certain important achievements. Today we have with us Honorable Justice A.K. Sikri. Justice Sikri is an eminent jurist and a former judge of the Supreme Court of India with a strong commitment towards upholding constitutional principles and human rights. He was sworn in as a Supreme Court judge in April 2013 and retired in March 2019. Earlier, he had served as a Chief Justice of the Punjab and Haryana High Court. Presently, he is an international judge at the Singapore International Commercial Court. He is also the chairperson of News Broadcasting Standards Authority. We are extremely glad to have you with us, sir, today. We also have with us Honorable Justice Richard Bernstein. Justice Bernstein received his undergraduate degree from the University of Michigan and his JD from Northwestern University. He served as the head of the Public Service Division at the Sam Bernstein Law Firm. Justice Bernstein is presently a judge of the Michigan Supreme Court and carries the record of being the first blind justice to be elected to the Michigan Supreme Court. We welcome you, sir, to this summit. The third speaker for today is Honorable Justice Ronald Gould. After graduating from University of Michigan Law School in 1973, Judge Gould clerked first for Honorable Wade H. McCree Jr. of the Sixth Circuit and then for U.S. Supreme Court Justice Porter Stewart. He started working at Perkins Coie as an associate in 1975 and later on became a partner of the said firm. He was appointed as a judge to the Ninth Circuit in 1999 and sits as an United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit. I welcome you, sir, to this session. The fourth speaker for today is Honorable Justice H.S. Jaggi. Jaggi, sir, is a graduate of Campus Law Center, Delhi University. He went on to do LLM from Georgetown University before joining the legal profession with advocate on record Pradeep Bakshi. He subsequently worked with Tully and Company and Oxmunder before starting his own law firm, Luthra and Jaggi. He cleared the 2015 Delhi Judicial Services examination and became the first differently abled candidate to join the judiciary through the Delhi Higher Judicial Services after the post for the same was created in 2014 and is presently Additional District Judge of Southwest District Court, Delhi. The fifth speaker for today is Justice Zach Yaqub. Justice Yaqub, after completing law graduation in 1972, served his pupillage in Durban in 1973. The Natal Provincial Division of the Supreme Court admitted him as an advocate. Then he practiced as a junior counsel. He joined the Constitutional Court of South Africa in February 1998 and served the cause of justice till 2013. Justice Yaqub has been heavily involved in the activities of the Natal Indian Blind and Deaf Society and the South African National Council for the Blind. He was the chairperson of the South African National Council for the Blind and was a member of its National Management Committee and its National Executive Committee. We thank you, sir, for your participation in the summit, though not in person, but by sending a video message. This entire session will be moderated by Justice Madan Lokur. Justice Madan Lokur graduated in history from St. Stephen's College, Delhi University with honors and obtained his law degree from Faculty of Law, Delhi University. Justice Lokur was enrolled at the bar in 1977 and practiced in Supreme Court of India and the Delhi High Court. He joined Delhi High Court in 1999. He functioned also as the acting Chief Justice of the Delhi High Court and then the Chief Justice of Guwahati High Court and High Court of Judicature at Hyderabad. He was elevated as the Judge of Supreme Court in 2012 and retired in December 2018. He is now a judge of the non-resident panel of the Supreme Court of Fiji and by far the first Indian judge to become a judge of a foreign country. I thank all the speakers for giving their time to this session. I would request all the speakers to make their opening remarks and then we would hand over to Justice Madan Lokur sir for the purposes of moderating the session. I would like to first of all request Justice Sikri to start the session with his remarks.
Thank you very much. Good morning and good evening to all the participants. Let me wish everybody today's World Disability Day also on this occasion. In the beginning, I also want to congratulate ILS for organizing this World Conference on a very, very important theme. We have been discussing about the rights of disability, rights of persons suffering from disability for last many, many years. But the focus which is given now as far as this conference is concerned, such persons, how and where they fit in the legal system, which is really very important. And as we heard Mr. Jain about it and Mr. Rahul Bajaj also threw some light on the conceptualization of this particular topic. Let me begin from the beginning in order to come to this theme of the topic, which would be necessary. I'll take few minutes in highlighting that aspect. That it's a tedious and well-fought journey for the person suffering from disability. that the fight which has today we know it, and we are all talking about the issue as human rights issue. But then the traditional approaches were totally different. Initially, patronizing and paternalistic approach to medical need approach, and how we have arrived at this human rights approach. Initially, it was depicted as a health and welfare issue to be addressed through care provided to persons with disability from charitable point of view. The disabled persons are viewed as abnormal, deserving of pity and care, and not as individuals who are entitled to enjoy the same opportunities to live a full life and satisfying life as other members of the society. So in this process, disability became or was couched within a medical and welfare framework, identifying people disabilities as ill, different from their non-disabled peers, and in need of care. Because the emphasis is on medical needs of the people with disability, there was a corresponding neglect of their wider social needs, which resulted in severe isolation for people with disabilities and their families. And the another cascading effect was that this resulted in marginalizing the disabled persons and their exclusion both from the mainstream of the society and enjoyment of their fundamental rights and freedom. So thankfully, it was realized over a period of time that the persons suffering from various kinds of disabilities are also in the same league and are same as their other counterparts. And it started with, if I may say so, UN Declaration of Human Rights. The charter, although it doesn't talk specifically about disabled persons, but there was much ammunition and much substance therein which could link it with the human development, because it acknowledged that human rights are individual and have a definite linkage of human development, both sharing common vision and with a common purpose. Respect for human rights is the root for human development and realization of full potential of each individual, which in turn leads to the augmentation of human resources with progress of the nation. So this linkage with the human right development in that UN declaration, and emphasizing dignity in the process, and also mentioning about the equality, which is founded upon two complementary principles, that is non-discrimination and reasonable differentiation. I think it made all the difference. Of course, thereafter, there was two major declarations on the disabled, one in December 20th, 1971, which was on rights of mentally retarded persons, and thereafter in 1975, when the General Assembly of UN adopted the Declaration on Rights of Disabled Persons, which proclaimed that disabled persons have the same civil and political rights as other human beings. The declaration states, and I quote, "Disabled persons should receive equal treatment and services which will enable them to develop their capabilities and skills to the maximum and will hasten the process of their social integration or reintegration." Every word of this declaration, I think, is of importance. And three things which I find, and which we can trace it to our constitution also, because constitution, Indian constitution also doesn't specifically say about the rights of disabled persons. But as I said, one is linkage of human development with the human rights, which is based on dignity, if I may say so, and which has been highlighted time and again. And as was stated by Mr. Jain as well, dignity means right of choice, which is to be given to the persons. First is, if I may say that it's aimed at empowering a person or empowerment of the persons. And in this, three aspects which are to be kept in mind. Number one, respect for one's capacity as an agent to make one's own free choices. In the context of disability, we'll say that we have to respect the capacity of a person suffering from disability, that such a person has also the capacity to make his or her choices. And number two, respect the choices so made. Whatever choice is made, we should respect that choice. And number three, respect for one's need to have context and conditions in which one can operate as a source of free and informed choice. So the context and conditions in which choice is made, we have to respect that also. Now, fortunately, this dignity, as I said, that under the Indian Constitution, though there is no specific provision about the on disabled persons, but Article 14, read with 15 and 16, which talks of equality. Then Article 21, which talks of this fundamental right that nobody can be deprived of his life and liberty without process of law. And into this, the dignity is read that life does not mean only an animal existence, but life which can be lived and which everybody has right to live with dignity. And third is, I would say that we have directive principles of state policy also, and Article 41 therein, which says right to work, to education, and public assistance in certain cases. So from this have emerged, which I'll come little later, how the courts have interpreted the made rather this right as a fundamental right or human rights of the persons. Now, the question in this whole process that arises is that we have to see at this stage, in spite of all these rights, and of course we have that this Beijing Declaration in 1992, which led to the passing of the law on disability in 1995-6, and then new act in 2016 have given so many rights to the people. Now, main and difficult question which arises is how far we have succeeded in realizing the rights. I was reading today only in the Indian Express, Mr. Shashi Tharoor has written an article, A Failure to Enable. That is, law promises with disability equality of opportunity and accessibility, but our practices deny them that. Now, this is very, very important, and on which, when we come to this subject, I'll like to highlight that what he has said, and we have been also saying, it is the mindset of the people at large which still denies them their right. And if I may say so here, although Mr. Jain had highlighted on that here people are not accepted in the mainstream, even when the people, the people suffering from disability are not accepted in the mainstream, even when the other people sympathize with them. Most common, their lives are handicapped by social, cultural, and attitudinal barriers, which Rahul Bajaj also pointed out, which hamper their full participation and enjoyment of equal rights and opportunities. Equal opportunities that don't sympathize with us, only have empathy. You just recognize our needs and just recognize our rights and give us the chance to grow in the society. And here, Judy Human has said, disability only becomes a tragedy for me when society fails to provide the things we need to lead our lives, job opportunities, or barrier-free buildings, for example. It is not a tragedy to me that I am living in a wheelchair. So the main thing which I feel is that yes, change in the mindset which is required. And in this process, what is important is, if it's not a time and opportunity or rather an occasion to go into various cases which have been decided by the Indian courts insofar as disability laws are concerned. But as I see, and I only want to flag some of the points, as I see the judicial journey insofar as these rights are concerned, even after coming into effect the law in the form of Disability Act of 1995, many provisions were still dormant, and the courts had to intervene to direct the government to activate those provisions. 2016, this also Supreme Court as well as access to public places, etc., is concerned. And this many institutions were not following, like 3% reservation. Directions had to be given. That I had seen at one place, that's where the court had to, Delhi High Court had given the directions that to claim the benefits of disability, the certificates which are to be issued, the hospitals were not designated under the act which is to be done. So direction was given to do that also. Now, other aspect which I want to highlight is the pragmatic and human rights approach which is given by the court, and there are so many judgments where very bold interpretation to various provisions was given, and in many cases the courts have interpreted in a manner or gave the direction which amount to change in the mindset of the people also. Like I remember in one case a person suffering from he was handicapped, was not appointed as a physical training teacher. The High Court gave the direction that he should be appointed, because when under the Act, this is not treated as disability or disqualification for that particular post, why he is not appointed. Same applied to in one visually impaired lady who was not appointed as music teacher in university. Direction was given to appoint her. And another case was of blind person who was, in spite of clearing and the not only written examination and interview also, not appointed as IAS officer, where the direction was given by the court. No, so therefore all these directions are given, and when it comes to various other fields, like as I've said, in the administration, in the sports, etc., when it is given, why not when we come to the this legal field, why this mindset? Now, Mr. Rahul had rightly pointed out about the judgment of the courts which have been recently given, when they said that if 40 to 50% disability visual impairment is concerned, the person should not be appointed as member of the Tamil Nadu Judicial Service. This, I would say, is a, to some extent, I'm little baffled when on the one hand, Supreme Court has been giving all these directions, positive direction for advancement of the rights of the people. Why, when it comes to visually impaired persons in the judicial service, they should not be appointed? Of course, one can see this from different angles. And maybe what was in the mind of the court was that a person in judicial service, say at magisterial level or who is a session judge, has to come across the persons, and like when the evidence etc. is to be recorded, he or she has to see the demeanor of the witness and may not be able to do the function of a judge more effectively. But here in this panel itself, we have 4 judges, out of which 2 are visually impaired, who are there and who have been judges, and they have shown that they can be, and both of them are outstanding judges, world-known judges. And if they can overcome their physical disability or even the this impairment as well as visual impairment is concerned, why not? Now, I take it this from another angle also. Let us presume that a judge who is a able judge, so-called able judge, because when we say in which category we fall, and the cases come before him or her of a person where either the litigant is visually or otherwise physically impaired, or the advocate who appears is physically handicapped or visually handicapped, or a witness who appears is having such a kind of handicappedness. In order to do justice in that matter, it is for that judge to ensure level playing field and to overcome and ensure the process, due process, which takes care of that disability, so that the person is able to depose, the person is able to present the case, and the person is able to argue if he is or she is an advocate. So therefore, once this becomes the duty of the judiciary or the judges to impart justice and to do justice in a particular case, notwithstanding the fact that the person appearing before him or her suffers from disability, any of these stakeholders, then why not I mean, it should be translated that such a person can, with such disability, can sit as a judge also and take care. Rather, I would say such a person would be more, I mean, sensitive towards the needs of the person suffering from a disability. So, therefore, my humble submission is that. Notwithstanding, good thing, I mean, as far as Delhi is concerned, we know it as we have found that Mr. Jaggi is there, who is our district judge, who has been appointed because of the fact that there is a reservation, and which has been provided by the Delhi judiciary. This need to be replicated everywhere. 3% reservation for the person suffering from disability is the norm. This is the right of such people. So once that is there, it should not be in the mind of, and it's only totally a case of mindset, which has to be changed. And whether it is a visually blind, impaired person, or whether suffering from any other disability, I don't think that a person cannot do. Our science is developing at a fast pace. We have come for, I mean, thus far, and today there are many scientific instruments, etc., or from where the persons from such disability can overcome the disability and discharge their function. This is recognized, if I may say so, in 2000 Act as well. And that is why in Rajiv Raturi, all that what is provided in the Act, the direction was given to the government that this is what the law gives them the benefit to do this, right to public access. And when in braille form we can give the material, etc., whether it is in the form of case law, or it is in the form of text, or it is in the form of BearX, etc., it can be provided, then why not a person can discharge the function as a judge also? So that mindset has to change. And I say at the end that I'll be, like Mr. Jain has said, that I'll be, and I can say on behalf of Justice Lokur also, that we would be the happiest persons if during our lifetime we see some such visually impaired person as the judge of the High Court or the Supreme Court. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your positive comments and also enlightening us about the measures which the Indian judiciary has till now taken for the cause of rights of persons with disabilities. Now, I would like to ask Jain sir that whether Mr. Justice Richard Bernstein is still there. Yeah,
He is there.
Yeah, so we would like to request him to make his opening remarks.
Justice Bernstein. Justice Bernstein, can you make your remarks? Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
good evening, everybody. First off, I just really want to say that I happen to love India. I had the opportunity to visit a short time ago, and I just really want to say that never before have I met such kind and warm and generous people. There is such an incredible spirit that exists within India that you don't find in too many other places. You just see that the people just have a warmth and a kindness. And there's such this wonderful vibrance of life that you're able to feel whenever you have the opportunity to travel and go throughout the country. One of the things that I wanted to emphasize and really highlight is some of the issues that I was able to address upon my last visit to India. And that is dealing with the concern that people have about people who are blind serving in the judiciary. And in the short time that I'll have the opportunity to kind of make these remarks, I really just want to focus on that. I have had the opportunity to serve now as a Supreme Court Justice for the state of Michigan for a little over 6 years. And I have come to find that when you're looking for the qualities and characteristics that go into becoming a judge, what I have come to realize is that it's not necessarily your academics, it's not necessarily your intellectualism, not necessarily your ability to research and to write and to publish. But what I have found in my experience in serving on Michigan's highest court is that what really goes into being a good judge. And in Michigan, when you're serving on the Supreme Court, we have to be generalists. We have to decide all cases that affect the state of Michigan and the 11 million people who reside there. So ultimately, dealing with cases on one day that deal with murder, you can be dealing with cases that involve sexual assault, you can be dealing with cases that involve all environmental law or environmental concerns, all court issues, all contract issues, and even taxation issues have to come to the Supreme Court, and even issues that deal with family law. And the reason I say that is because when you have a judge who is blind, I would argue that a blind judge is able to serve in this position better than a sighted judge. And the reason for that is because when you ultimately look at the U.S. system of justice, it is in fact a person who has a blindfold. And I would argue that a person who is blind that serves in this capacity is not disposed to prejudice. You don't know how people look. You don't know how they present. And I would make an argument that often it's the case that sight and being able to prejudge people based on their appearance can often serve as a distraction. So I recognize that this has become an issue, throughout India.
Justice
Jai-
Bernstein's voice
Jai-
has
yeah,
become
we
dull.
cannot hear him. Yeah.
Just a minute. Yeah, just a minute, Bernstein. Can you please wait for a minute? We are just fixing it.
Yeah.
Phone se volume.
Yeah, it's suddenly gone down for some reason.
Phone volume. Yeah. Justice Bernstein, now you can begin.
Okay, thank you. So I would put forth the argument that blindness can actually make a person a better judge because of the fact that you're not able to see, because of the fact that you're not able to prejudge. And I think that ultimately, when you ask what are the qualifications that go into being a good judge, I would put forth the contention that it's your life experience. And that often is the case that a person who knows struggle, or a person who knows hardship, or a person who knows difficulty is able to better understand the challenges and the difficulties and the hardships of those who come before them. So I would put forth the notion that the best judges are the judges who have had the most difficult lives, and are the judges who have had to face suffering, and the judges who have to know hardship. Because if you're able to understand suffering, you're able to serve with a certain empathy. You're able to have an understanding, and you're able to have an appreciation of all the challenges and all the issues and all the difficulties that those who come before you ultimately have to face. And I just want to say in the short time that I'll be making my comments, and ultimately I'm hoping that people have lots of questions, and the more questions and the more personal you make your questions, the more that I am truly going to enjoy having the opportunity to answer them, especially as it comes to how you serve as a blind person. But I would also put forth that in Michigan, we elect our judges. And I realize that's kind of a conversation kind of on its own, where basically we don't appoint them, but we elect them. And in the state of 11 million people, it requires you to have to travel from cities to towns to all the different counties that make up our state. And people often have this debate and this discussion as to, well, if you're looking at a process or a system, what's better? Is it better to appoint a judge, or is it better to elect a judge? And I recognize that when you're dealing with this, that you can have, arguments on both sides. You can have arguments that are for and you can have arguments that are against. And no system obviously is going to be perfect. But I feel very strongly about this, that the fact that Michigan elects its judges is the reason that I get to serve on the Supreme Court. Because if it was done as an appointment process, where you were chosen to serve rather than elected to serve, I honestly believe that I would never be given this opportunity. I think that what would happen is if I went before a committee and kind of requested an appointment, I think people would look at me and they would say, wow, that person's blind, and, they would have all these doubts, they'd have all these issues, they'd have all these concerns. How does he navigate the courtroom? How is he able to understand and appreciate evidence? How is he able to know what a crime scene looks like? How can he keep up with the reading materials? How can he digest and process the briefs and the materials that are necessary in order to perform in this position? But what was great about an election was that often the people that would make a decision as to whether or not someone who is blind can serve, it's not the people that often are the ones that are the most exposed to it that are your best judges. It's the actual general people, the general voter. So in Michigan, if it had been an appointment process, the people that were in power would have said, this is too risky, this is too difficult, it will never work. But what happened because it was an election was that the people of the state of Michigan basically said, you know what? I think that I want to give a blind person a chance. Because I think that he has a certain understanding or a certain appreciation of challenge or difficulty or hardship that I think would allow for him to serve in this position in a very good manner, in a manner that would actually bring justice. So I just feel that ultimately, when you have people that have these life experiences, I really believe you get good verdicts. You get good judgment, because ultimately we are able to sit at the table. And in Michigan, we have 7 justices. And when you're sitting in conference and you're deciding a case, and this case is ultimately going to decide a person's entire fate. It's going to decide whether they're going to live free. It's going to decide whether a company is able to build a nuclear power plant. It's going to decide whether a person can keep their family together. What happens is when you have different perspectives, when you have an array of different understanding, when you have a sense of awareness that comes from somebody with a disability, you are able to add to the conversation. And you're able to add to it in a meaningful way that allows for people who haven't had that exposure or who haven't had that awareness to look at something and see something that they otherwise might have missed. And I'm just going to end by just saying very quickly, and then hopefully we'll go into questions after our other panelists speak, but just in terms of some of the issues that I think are happening in India right now, with this concern over whether or not somebody who is blind is able to serve in this type of a position. And I would simply say, as a Supreme Court justice, it's not just my job to decide individual cases, but it's also my job, as well as the 6 other justices that I serve with, to oversee the entire court system for the state. So we aren't just responsible for being the last word in all cases that affect our state. We also have to oversee over 800 judges in the lower court. We have to give them guidance. We have to allow for them to know what the rules and regulations are. And one of my first opinions that I had a chance to write was the Stevens opinion. And it basically set forth the parameters as to when is it that a judge goes from being impartial to partial. When does a judge who has a display of partiality ultimately affect a jury and a jury's interpretation of the law, the facts of the case before them? And what was exciting about writing an opinion like that, as a blind judge, was the fact that when setting forth what the rules and guidelines are going to be for all the courts in Michigan as to what creates impartiality and when is that line crossed, I was able to incorporate things that sighted people would have missed and would not have thought of. But that ultimately goes with a holistic approach of how we practice and how we perform. And I would just simply say, kind of in the last moment that I have in the opening comments of our discussion, is people often ask, so how do you do the job? You know, you're blind. How do you do this? How does it work? And I would just simply say that when you give someone who is blind or disabled an opportunity, they will never take it for granted. They will always work harder and be better because they realize that people are counting on them. And they realize how important this is. And they realize how significant it is. And they realize that they can never fail because too much is riding on it. And I would just simply say that the way that it works in Michigan is that every Wednesday we have over 25 cases that come to conference. We have to vote on each one of these cases as to what we're going to do with it. Is the court going to hear it or is the court going to deny it? And people say, so there's 26, 27, 28 cases every single week. How does a blind person handle it? It can't be done. Blind people can't be in this position. Blind people can't do this job. How are you going to go to conference? How are you going to vote on 28 cases every single week when you have voluminous materials of reading? When you have transcripts that can be 3 to 4 weeks long of a murder case in a trial court? There's no way a blind person is going to be able to function with capacity. There's no way a blind person is going to keep up with the paper flow. There's no way a blind person is going to be able to engage in conversation with the other justices at the appropriate level. That can't be done. That's not possible. We can't allow somebody who is blind to be in a position like this. So what I would tell you is the way that it works is you can't really use Braille for these types of conferences. Because there's no way that you can put into Braille a murder transcript that goes for 3 weeks. It's just not possible, especially with the amount of cases we have to handle. So if you can't use Braille, then people say, well, what about technology? You use a computer, you use technology in order to interpret the cases and keep up with the cases. And the answer is that you can't use technology either, because if you're focusing on your computer and you're focusing on technology, you're not able to engage in the conversation that is necessary for you to put forth your point of view as well as to hear what your colleagues are saying. So technology is not a sufficient way to approach a conference. So how does a blind person practice or perform in this position? 26, 27, 28 cases every single week. You have huge amounts of material that you have to digest and be able to understand and appreciate, as well as being able to persuade your colleagues as to your viewpoint on the law, as well as the fact that we're a common law system, so you can't just know the case that you're voting on, but you have to know all the other corresponding cases that either support your position or work against your position. And so how does it work as a blind person? The way that we do it is that I memorize all the material. And I can't memorize it word for word because that wouldn't be possible. But I will know every key legal issue and every key legal point of the cases that are coming before us that I have to vote on. And what the commissioner will do is the commissioner will recite the facts of the case. So the commissioner will say, we have now reached case 18. Case 18 is a carjacking that resulted in 2 homicides. When I hear carjacking and 2 homicides, I can recall the case in its entirety and then be able to debate and discuss the merits of it with my colleagues. And I think the real essence of this is the simple fact that when you provide the opportunity, when you provide somebody a chance, they will not let you down. They will work 7 days a week. They will work 10 hours a day. And ultimately, what you come to find in these situations, and I'm hoping that that this can be achieved or the conversation can commence, with this summit. I believe what ultimately happens when we're talking about people with disabilities in the judiciary and people with disabilities in life, it's this simple motto: what is good for the disabled is good for everybody. But most importantly, people with disabilities, we know what we can accomplish. We know what we can achieve. And we know what we are capable of. The real challenge for us is for those who do not have disabilities to reconcile and realize what our capabilities are and where our talents are. Thank you for this conference. Thank you for inviting me. And I'm looking forward to hopefully having us all come together in India for next year's conference.
Thank you very much.
चंदमामांनी हे अर्ज दिलेला आहे.
Thank you so much, Justice Bernstein.
त्यांना
Let
Thank
me
you
just
so
say
much.
that.
Thank you so much.
Such a wonderful address.
12 ते 19 नाही आहे.
I would now like to request Justice
Okay,
Ronald
त्यांची
Gould
शिल्लक काय आहेत
to
बघा.
make his opening remarks.
Thank you.
म्हणजे विदाउट
Now, please go first.
Okay.
First of all, I'm just absolutely
नाही हे भरून तिकडे
honored
पाठवलं.
and pleased
नाही आपल्याकडे
to be able
स्टुडंट्स
to
करतात
participate
नाही,
with such
फॉर्मॅट मी
distinguished
बारकाईने
judges.
बघितलं.
So we
त्याच्यामध्ये असं आहे.
ते पहिले परमनंट होतं तेव्हा ते
ही
let's
विचारतील.
enjoy it. Let's enjoy it.
जैनचं.
हो
Second,
सरांकडे का म्हणून ते ऑफिस
I'll offer a few
आपण
observations
रजा वगैरे काय असेल ते टाका.
of things
मी ते सही
from
करतो.
my experience.
तिकडे पाठवून देऊ. बरं
I believe that the disability
बोला
the old beliefs.
बोला बोला.
I think that what happened for me has always been
Judge Gould, can you just steady your microphone? Your voice is wavering a little because I think your microphone is going here and there.
एन्क्वायरी बसली होती सेक्शुअल हॅरेसमेंटची 6ला संपेल.
I swear.
Yes, now it's good. Now it's good. It just became muffled in between. Now it's good.
Okay, my disability is MS. Occasionally my vocal cords get awfully weak, and I'll sip water to strengthen it. But
Thank you.
what I wanted to say was,
डोक्याला लावले पावत्या फाडायला
if a person
पार्किंगच्या
with
मला
a
ग्राउंड
disability
काय करायचं
will only concentrate
तुम्ही आणि मला घ्यावं
on what
लागतं
they
जवळ,
can
असं
do
दिसतंय.
rather than on what they cannot do, I believe they can achieve quite a bit.
अवघड आहे.
Then, of course, I need not address that point for this distinguished and high achieving group. But if there are law students who listen to these lectures, I hope they will keep that in mind.
आज महेंद्र आहे ना?
Second,
महेंद्र आहे ना?
whatever a person thinks they can do, they need a system of law in their community that will provide them with a reasonable accommodation. In the U.S., we have a federalism system, and we have laws at the federal level in the Americans with Disabilities Act, and we have laws in every single one of our 50 states. And then finally, we have laws in local jurisdictions. All of these can help provide reasonable accommodations to those with disabilities, to permit them to reach their goals and contribute to society. Third, whatever they feel they concentrate on, they really can't necessarily achieve it without that legal framework. So those of you who are able to influence the legislators in your country or the members of your highest court to get the legal framework established, I really urge you to set up a system that gives the force of law to accommodations for those who need it, for those who can benefit from it. Fourth, I think as several speakers have mentioned, ultimately there's an attitudinal problem in society that must be overcome if the disabled are going to achieve as much as they can. So, for example, if a law student who's brilliant cannot get a job in a law firm after graduation, it's going to be hard for them to prove themselves. If they'd like to be a judge but can't get an opportunity working for a judge like the opportunities I had with Judge McCree and Justice Stewart, it's going to be harder for them to envision doing that. So I'd like to encourage my colleagues here, if you haven't already done it, to please try to consider hiring any highly qualified disabled persons who might apply to work for you as a law clerk. In my case, I've had several law clerks who, like me, were in wheelchairs. One of them went on to found an orphanage in another country, and another one has received a commission to be a judge in a court in Seattle. And I've had clerks with other disabilities, but I've had a clerk almost totally blind who performed with unbelievable excellence for me. And I'm not sure how she did it, but I know this: when I hired her, she'd done well in law school. And I asked her, was there any software that my court could buy that would help accommodate her needs to create high quality work for me? And she said there was, and told me the Blue Ribbon software she recommended. And my court got that for her. And somehow it helped her get through these massive records that we had and be able to pinpoint what she needed. So I do encourage that. Beyond that, I think I would just say, I'm sure I could learn more on this panel from listening than I can from talking. So I'd like to cede my time to my colleagues, if there's any remaining. And thank you all for the great pleasure of meeting with you.
Thank you, Justice Gould. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. I would now like to request Justice H.S. Jaggi to make his opening remarks.
Morning, everyone. Varsha, I would just like to correct you. I am still not justice. I would go by the judge, or you can just call me additional district judge. So good morning, everyone. Good morning, Justice Sikri. Good morning, Justice Madan Lokur. Good evening, Justice Richard Bernstein. And good evening, Justice Ronald Gould. Good evening, all, and sorry. Back to good morning, dear friends who have joined us from all over the world. And Justice Ronald Gould, I would take your generous offer of eating away the time which you ceded, because I have a lot to talk. And at the outset, I would say this is a great endeavor, and I must say, much required, a real shot in the arm to the cause of pertaining to differently able persons, particularly during these unprecedented times caused by the coronavirus pandemic. Now, describing my last 42 years in 10 minutes is quite a challenge. However, I shall accept the challenge. That's what I've been doing so far. So the book which Rahul Bajaj spoke about, it can be done. Rather, I would say that together we can do it. Usually, we end our speeches with a quote. Over here on the World Disability Day, I would like to start mine with a quote of Oscar Wilde. We are all in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars. My story dates back to the year 1979 when I was born. And as a child, we all believe in miracles, magic. I was not untouched by them during my childhood days. Often as a child, I remember standing in front of a mirror in a vest, looking at my torso and particularly my arms, and used to think that one day Guru Gobind Singh Ji, our 10th Guru, would appear in front of me and using his magical powers would make both my arms equal. My name's Hargur Varinder Singh Jaggi. I was born with a congenital birth defect in my left arm. I have a fused elbow and with an underdeveloped shoulder. My left arm is over 7.5 inches shorter than the right. And oh, yes, I also have a missing finger. I don't know if it is the ring finger or it is the little pinky one. So, since I belong to my native place is Punjab, I was very enthusiastic as a child to join the armed forces, but my hopes were dashed when I learned that I cannot do it. So, I'll quickly recap and I'll like to walk you all through that how I came in my first contact with law and how I learned about inclusivity as a child. So I went to the boarding school since Punjab was infested with terrorism. So my parents, who did not have formal education, but they ensured that the children did get one. So we were put to a boarding school. So over there, our school was in the Himalayan range. So over there, we had the famous overlooking Lambi Dher mines, which I believe all of us must know because we have a lot many law students. It is covered in the landmark case of a Supreme Court in Rural Litigation Entitlement Kendra B state of UP. When one day during our assembly, we were told that the mining activity which you are seeing across would stop. And I was so surprised to learn that such big trucks rushing up and down, snaking up and down the hill, and mine blasting going on, the cranes working overtime, they would just come to a grinding halt. What is it? What has made this activity stop? That's when I learned there is something called law and court of courts, the Supreme Court. Then the second lesson I would talk about is, which I learned on inclusivity, is when I was in a school as a child. Though in our school we had a biannual activity of march past when the whole school house-wise got together and did their march past. Ironically, I was pulled out and I was made to sit aside from the whole school. I did not understand for a few years why this kind of treatment has been given to me. But until I got to grade 8, I did not like this discrimination. Nobody could decide for me that if I cannot flex my arm, if I cannot be part of the mainstream, why am I asked to sit aside? Then something in me came in. I decided to learn how to play drums. So you can imagine it is very difficult when you play drums, and especially for a differently able person, and that also having my situation because I have mentioned I have a shorter arm. I joined as a side drummer and then I rose to become the bass drummer for the school. So now what did I do over the years? I learned where when I was asked to sit, I was marginalized, I was asked to sit aside. Now at my command, the whole school started the march past. At my command, they all came to a stop. So this is what I learned about inclusivity. That's how you can become inclusive. Now again, fast forward, how I ended up in law. My dad didn't have formal education, so he has all been gung-ho that you need to become an IS officer. As a dutiful son, I obeyed my father. I had a subject, I did an honors in the public administration, and I also took law as a subject. So after finishing law degree, when I went to UPSC, that is our Union Public Service Commission, just like a federal commission, which deals with the employment and hiring examination of for the services, I was asked to go seek a reference from Department of Personnel and Training on the North Block. It was peak summertime. I was asked to move up and down. And when I reached the North Block office, a gentleman, an officer whose name I will refrain to disclose, asked me very curt questions about my physical appearance, about my disability. I had even to show my arm. I did feel humiliated, but he could not shake my resolve. That's the time I decided I don't want to become an IS officer. The reason why he was doing this to me at that point in time, a differently able person could not choose his preference of state and cadre of services. Courtesy our Honorable High Court, a judgment came back a year or two later than that, and that thing was set right. Then when I got out of the North Block office of the government, I was driving down I was being driven down to the India Gate Circle, the very famous India Gate Circle. So in a sequence, I first came a signboard of Supreme Court of India, then in the second came Patiala House Courts, and then the third came High Court. I said, writing is here on the signages. I have a law degree. This is where I need to go. I need not look. I was just wasting my time over there. So that's how I got into law. At that particular time, I still remember when I was standing in the Honorable High Court's main lobby where all lawyers wait, and I just asked my senior that what it takes to be a judge. They say it takes a lot because it is a very hard job. If you think you can just write well or you can read well, you cannot do it. You need to have a strong metal and you need to have something in you with which you can last. So that's when I decided I will not get into the entry level judgeship. I would gain some experience, work as a lawyer, understand the system better, and then join in. So that's when I decided I need to take the exams for the higher judicial services, where you directly get absorbed as a judge, being an additional district judge or an additional sessions judge. And this very fact I duly noted in my testimonials and statement of purpose when I applied for US law schools for LLM. So I would say when I took the exam and in the ultimate round, when I made it to the interview, which was not an easy way, again, I had to challenge my result. I had filed a writ, and I just sought 1 mark by God's grace. Other fellow applicants followed me, and they also filed the writ, and everybody challenged the exam, and voila, I got 10 marks. So slowly, I marched ahead, and when I got to the final round, when I entered the interview room where they were going to interview me, there were 5 senior most judges sitting of the High Court. Those 22 to 25 minutes spent in the room with the interviewing panel have been the most satisfying moments of my life. When the justices were towering personalities, long-standing experiences of stage, asked me questions and listened carefully. My interaction with them made me realize that I have led a good life with true grit and determination. I joined the previous 2 sessions of this wondrous summit. I was curious to learn about their speakers who had joined us earlier, their stories, their struggle, and how they overcame challenges. After listening to Peter Blanc, Michael Ashley, Anna Lawson, Shirish Deshpande, Sanjay Jain, David Lipovsky, Laura Walk, Carol Taylor, and S.K. Rungta, I have come to a conclusion that the golden thread which intertwines all differently able persons is true grit, determination, self-belief, and their attitude. And this what has been today again put at display by Judge Gould and Justice Bernstein. So now coming to the challenges a differently able person may face on joining the bench. I would say the tribe of judges constitutes of intelligent, hardworking, astute people who want to bring a change in the society. And they all have welcomed me with open arms. After all, I am the first differently able judge, a differently able person to join the cadre of Delhi Higher Judicial Services. Courtesy, again, judgment of our Honorable High Court of Delhi in Nishan Diwan's case, which was passed in the year 2014. So, in the services, as per services rule, I am entitled for 4 extra days off, and I take great pride in letting all of you know that so far I've only taken, ever since I've joined, I've only taken 1 day off, and that too when my batchmates were going for an annual retreat, and I decided I want to run 18 kilometers on a mountain and do rafting, which I've never done. So that's the only time I took off. But other thing which I get as in the services is I do get a fuel grant, so which enables me to hire a driver. So since I live in a megapolis, Delhi, so a lot of time is spent in driving work and home. So with the driver driving, I often on the iPad I get to read stuff. So I try to use this facility there. Then I have a disability in my left arm, I cannot type the keyboard, but I have become quite proficient. I would say I can type. But again, services have given me a software called Dragon, which is voice recognition. So it has made my life quite easier. So far, I've only faced 2 challenges, and I would say that they are not at all institutional challenges. They are very personal challenges to me. The first challenge which I have faced as a judge is tying a band. In India, we judges tie band. I cannot raise my arm, I cannot tie it. So I was quite contemplating, battling with myself that whether I should seek an exemption right to the Honorable High Court, please grant me, and I would wear a necktie and not a band. Then I reminded myself that 14 years as a lawyer, I not only requested my associates, court clerks, friends, acquaintances, security guards, even strangers, complete strangers, please help me tie a band. I would stop them, I would say, help me tie a band because I can't tie it. And they all helped me. So I resolved that I would either request my orderly or my next door brother or sister judge, please tie my band every day morning without fail. The second demon which I had to slay as a judge was every day when you enter a courtroom. So what I had learned, all our justices also in the higher courts, when I used to appear, they all bowed their head and they did namaste. So that's what I decided, that even I need to bring that practice. Namaste, Judge Gould, means Naman Aste. We bow to the place where you reside. So this is the most humbling and unifying gesture in our Indian culture and society. Courtesy coronavirus, this has been accepted and adapted all over the world quite rapidly as an alternative to handshakes. So it takes quite an effort for me to raise my hands and fold them and then bow. And all I have to tell you, it causes me pain in my elbow and also in my joint, in my joint in the hand. So what I resolved that I will do this day, I will consider it as a daily habit of bowing my head and doing namaste, which would be a gentle reminder to me, to my own self, that I don't know where I'm going, but I certainly know where I come from. As a Southwest district, like Justice Sikri mentioned, and even Justice Bernstein mentioned, that people with differently abled persons, they can better understand the differently abled people. So as my first posting at Dwarka, I don't know what was it, I also happened to listen and decide the cases pertaining to differently able and mentally challenged persons. So I will come more to on that, what I do on that and what I have learned over there. But before that, the prompt which I had, I want to mention that what are the good practices I have adopted that lawyers and litigants take a differently able judge more seriously. Rule number one, I am disciplined and regular. As I mentioned, I don't take off. If the court hearing has to start at 10 a.m., I am sharp at 9:55 without fail sitting on my dais. I do try my best to read all the case briefs which are listed before me. I do prepare notes while the lawyers are advancing arguments. And I am very candid to ask the counsels when I cannot understand their proposition, please explain to me like you are explaining to a child. And I do try to support young lawyers and ask them to come prepared and just not seek adjournments, because I very well remember what it feels like to have butterflies in your stomach when you rise to address a court. And I also remember that I too was on that other side. I too stood there a while ago. So now, as I've spent most of my time within India, one thing today I want to speak about is, and which has already been touched about, that over the Indian society spectrum, we have an attitude full of sympathy towards differently able persons. Let me remind you, differently able persons do not need sympathy. Empathy is welcome, but sympathy does no good. As differently able persons are the marginalized section of our society, I personally believe a lot of heavy lifting is to be done by each one of us, particularly the able-bodied persons, so that we can have inclusivity in its true sense and not just a lip service. I would take an opportunity to speak at this summit with special focus on differently able person, when I would want to, there should be a change in narrative, referring to differently able persons as handicapped, be it physically or mentally challenged. Often I have seen that category reserved for differently able persons is mentioned as physically handicapped, aka PH. It so happened that my first posting again at Dwarka also has the roster where I get to decide cases about Right of Persons with Disability Act and Mental Health Care Act 2017. A lot many times during the court proceedings, I have heard lawyers referring to the subject person as physically handicapped, mental, demented. They even try to bring them to the court when the court has never asked them to produce the ward or the subject person. So I do tell them, I remind them that such piercing words should be avoided. We need to change the narrative. And once we have changed the narrative by refraining from not mentioning these persons as disabled, handicapped, etc., but as differently able person, we would step in the zone of ameliorating their challenges and apply the balm of inclusivity. I am elated to share that our Honorable Prime Minister of India came up with the term Devang and has nudged us all to shun the use of word Viklang and adopt Devang. It was heartening to read about the same in the newspapers. I would pause here and request the principal of ILS Law College Pune and also the society management of the Law College to consider this request to efface the use of word physical handicap blind with regard to the seats reserved for affirmative action and rather use differently abled persons with the subcategory of benchmark disability. My message to society and large and all over the world is this, that only if differently able persons start believing in themselves and set their goals clearly, trust me, nothing is beyond their reach. I was turned away by the pioneering mountaineering school in India from undertaking a basic mountaineering course. But on seeing my resolve carved with grit and determination, the Indian Mountaineering Foundation invited me to join them for Climbathon, an alpine training program in the year 2013. I give the credit to Providence and the entire forces of a universe that out of 12 members of a team, I became the first person to summit an unnamed peak at an altitude of 6,250 meters in the Sikri Glacier in Himachal Pradesh. As a matter of fact, the first differently able person who climbed that mountain. I have also run marathons across the Great Run of Kutch, Himalayan passes in the high altitude, and all I remember seeing crowds cheering for me and clapping for me. I am the solitary differently able judge in the Delhi Higher Judicial Services, and the one in Delhi Judicial Services, which is the entry level for metropolitan magistrates and civil judges, can be counted on my fingertips. I followed the process and result of the last two examination rounds conducted by the High Court of Delhi for Delhi Higher Judicial Services. I am not oblivious to the fact that these exams are anything but a walk in the park. However, I was quite sad to not find any serious differently able persons testing their mettle for the coveted post as judges. Trust me, there is room for many, provided a few good men and women are willing to get on board and serve the nation and the society. I am not sure, but we've not had differently able justices in higher judiciary, high courts, and Supreme Court. We certainly have a lot to catch up, and I am hopeful that inclusivity and diversity shall adorn as hallmark in all the major institutions and high offices of our country. The High Court of Delhi, by taking me in their fold as a differently able person, and that too as an additional district and sessions judge, has foisted the flag high and sent a message loud and clear that they have not forgotten about people like us, and they shall ensure that inclusivity is practiced and seen to be practiced. I would end on a note, the choice is yours, whether to sit outside and sulk or dig deeper within yourself to muster courage and strength to decide whether you wish to become that drummer at whose beats the school starts to march. Thank you and Jai Hind.
Thank you, Jaggi sir, for taking us through your entire journey and also for clearly demarcating between the institutional and personal barriers, making us aware about the differences between them. I also beg your pardon for improperly mentioning your designation, but also I wish that my mistake becomes a reality and you soon give us an opportunity to call you as justice. The fifth speaker for the day is Justice Zach Yakub, who unfortunately could not join us personally at this session, but he has extended his support for the cause by sharing his thoughts through a video message. So give us 2 minutes to do the technical arrangement and we can have the message shared with all of you. The video is getting loaded. Please give us 2 minutes for technical arrangements.
I'm not really able to do routine at all, which is as long as I can with the signal.
मोरे सर अच्छा काहीतरी प्रॉब्लेम येते सर मध्ये त्याने डाउनलोड केलं नसेल डाउनलोड केलं असतं तर झालं असतं
डाउनलोड नाही केला म्हणजे तो कसला व्हिडिओ यूट्यूबवरचा नाही चालू होत नाही
ड्राईव्हवरच असेल
हो त्याला सांगा
डाउनलोड करा
तुम्ही यूट्यूब पण बघा ना सर
हो यूट्यूबला आहे ना
पण म्हणजे आज रोहित सर नाही वाटतं तुम्ही आणि मी सर
येस
क्वेश्चन्स जनरली येत नाही त्याच्यावर काहीतरी असलं क्वेश्चन येतात फीडबॅक कधी पाठवतात काय लोक ना ओपन की फक्त फॉरवर्ड करा
हां हां नाही नाही महेंद्र उशीर येणार आहे
I use in this in playing the message, so we can move ahead with the further part of the session. And I would like to hand over the session to Justice Madan Lokur sir, who can start with the moderation. And if the technical arrangements are done, we'll come back to the message. Sir, you are on mute.
Okay. Thank you, Varsha.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Thank you. As a part of the moderation of the program, there are, a couple of questions, one question each that I would like to ask the panelists. So let me start with Justice Sikri. Justice Sikri, what do you think we in India need to do to increase the number of judges who are differently able? What do you think could be a plan of action?
You see, I think it's a very important question, and the fulcrum of the theme of this session. As we have seen, and I've seen the journey insofar as conferment of the rights or enforcement of the rights of disabled persons, or I would say differently abled person, as Jaggi has rightly pointed out. In my judgments, I've always used that expression, of course, but yeah, it should be used always. For differently abled persons, it's the mindset. And in the beginning, if you see, everywhere, I still remember it was way back in the year 2000, yeah. I had hardly been judge for 1 year. And when I was given this service roster, I found that, and the first case which came to me of Delhi University, which was pending for some years, and where there was no reservation. There was no, they were not making any reservation, although the Provision 1995 Act had already come into force. So therefore, then I realized that, look, and the way it was argued, adversarial position which was taken by the Council for Delhi University also, saying that no, it is not needed, because I mean, they would not be able to discharge this function. And that was, of course, one judgment, my very first judgment, but that was my brush with the rights of disabled persons also, or differently abled person also, when I started reading more and more about it. Frankly speaking, before that, even I had not seen much about as far as their rights are concerned. But that, sensitized me. Thereafter, sitting in that roster, I could decide in 1 year 5 or 6 cases. And I remember they were from different categories, etc. As I told you, the cases came to me where sports persons are not given their rights. Even those teachers in sports, those who they had passed the exam, etc. They had to come to the court because they were not appointed. And visually impaired person, as I said, the IS who had cleared. Jaggi has narrated his experience. Of course, I feel it is better for us or the system that he did not join UPSC and he has come to this system, and he'll lead as an example insofar as judiciary is concerned. But what I'm trying to say is that over a period of time, maybe by the judgments, awareness has been brought as far as the policy makers are concerned, that look, these persons are capable of performing. And therefore, this kind of awareness now has to go insofar as, and the mindset has to be changed insofar as judicial service is concerned. We have in our, of course, because it's Article 19(1)(g), and right to profession is a fundamental right. So nobody can stop a person to practice as an advocate, even if he is differently able person. He or she has to, yes, overcome his own difficulties and shine. And we have many examples thereof, even of visually impaired persons. So therefore, first thing which I feel is that the awareness, policymakers, and even sensitization to this extent, because of the judgment in Tamil Nadu, it has to come to as well, even as judges, because judges have also to realize, and this awareness can be, and I must appreciate or admire the step which Rahul has taken by interviewing 22 judges who fall in this category, are judges or lawyers, and how they have overcome their handicapness and have really, made their mark in their respective fields. And many visually impaired judges, insofar as judges of other kind of disability is concerned, there may not be much of a problem. Like Mr. Jaggi is itself an example, who has been appointed, and as he has rightly said, in Delhi there is a reservation, it has to be in all, so that is not a problem. Problem may be insofar as visually impaired persons are concerned. What I feel is that first thing which is to be said, that look, insofar as the appellate judiciary is concerned, High Court or Supreme Court, there is not going to be any problem. The two judges who have told us today only, and have said that how they have been, Justice Bernstein and Justice Gould, how they have been able to do this job, and what kind of support which is needed and they have been given, and on the basis of which they have been able to do that. So this kind of awareness has to become, mindset has to be changed. That is the first thing. Second thing is that yes, now judgment has come insofar as lower judiciary is concerned of the Supreme Court. So that may be a long drawn process when the judgment, the court rethinks and does its job and do in that sense. So therefore, what I feel is that law is there's no doubt about it. Now, enabling the law and enforcement of law is the question. And for that, it is the mindset which has to be changed. So the sensitization is to be done. And I think for doing that, in the beginning, another step which is coming to my mind is, which is said by other speakers also, and I also said, that today there are so many scientific gadgets, etc., which are available. Why not start first and show that it is demonstrated to the judiciary as well, that these persons, if a person who is visually impaired can argue in the court with the help of all those gadgets. So why not such a person is able to do the job of a judge as well, with the help of such scientific methods. And another thing which when it comes to the sensitization is that and which is said by other speakers and very rightly, eloquently, that look, we are in a better position to understand the difficulty of disabled persons or differently abled persons. So therefore, according to me, law is there in place because there is no provision in any law which debars a person from making, if a person is visually impaired, from becoming a judge. So if that law is there, it is only the enforcement of that law and right mindset which is needed, and we should take all those steps to do that.
Thank you. Varsha, we have with us Haben Garma. I think I hope I pronounced her name properly.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, she's one of the panelists. Would you like to invite her to speak, or how would you like to go about it?
Sir, actually, she has joined us, so I would like to welcome her. But we are going to have a separate event with her.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a fireside chat scheduled with her, so we'll start that as soon as this ends.
Okay, fine. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Well, in 1 minute, welcome the judges about the Haben. Introduce her briefly.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I don't know if Justice Bernstein is with us. Is he still with us?
Yes, sir. He's there.
Oh,
he's there, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. Justice Bernstein, I would like to ask you, what kind of changes in policies do you think would help, in first of all, in the recruitment of judges? I know you have mentioned about election of judges. In the recruitment of judges and in the functioning of judges, the use of technology. I understand you're not very comfortable with Zoom, and you would prefer to speak on telephone rather than going to Zoom. So, what are the kind of changes in policies that you visualize would help the judiciary?
It's an excellent question. I think the key to basically allowing for folks with disabilities, and in my kind of specific area would be in the area of blindness, is that there's no two disabled people who are the same, just like there's no two blind people who are the same. And everybody kind of has their own way of doing things that kind of works best for them. So I think the real key to it is that, in my situation, it was very interesting. Going back to the premise that we were talking about, that I was elected rather than appointed. So when you're elected, the state court system had to figure out a way to kind of accommodate. So there was a situation where, it was like, okay, so after the election, the court system said, oh, wow, we have a blind judge who is, coming down to the court. And what was interesting is that, a lot of times, you sit down and you work with folks to figure out kind of what the best approach is. So in my situation, I tend to do better with people. So for me, it's just easier to kind of interact with folks. I just really like people. I like to be with people. I like to spend time with people. I like to connect with people. So I work better with people. And that's why this pandemic has been so difficult, because I think for blind people, when you remove, other people, when you make it harder for folks to be together, when you make it difficult for people to come into work and actually spend time in person, it really presents unique challenges to folks like themselves who really are kind of much more heavily reliant on others. And the reason I say that is that in terms of accommodations, for me, it wasn't as much technology that would be as helpful, but people. So for me, the accommodation that I get is I get one additional clerk. So my colleagues all have 5 clerks, and I get 6 clerks. So I get one additional person. And I think that really kind of makes it much easier for me to function and for me to work mainly just because the hours, if it takes you 1 hour to do something, it takes me 5 hours. So it's a 1 to 5 ratio. So I think what happens when you have an additional clerk is, in appellate work, what happens is that, you've got a number of documents that you've got like in front of you. You always have to have the U.S. Constitution, you have to have the Michigan Constitution, you have to have the statute that you're looking at, you have to have the legislative history, so there might be notes in terms of kind of the historical perspective of how the statute was crafted. You have to have the, petitioner's brief, you have to have, you have to have the appellant's brief, you have to have the appellee's brief, because you want to have them kind of side by side. And so what tends to happen is you've got all these documents that you're having to look at one time, while at the same time you're trying to craft an opinion based on kind of how the votes went. And so for me, that's why it just makes much better sense with having an additional clerk, because what they're able to do, especially clerks that know you, and in my situation, I just have exceptional clerks. And I think what all the judges on this panel will say is that your clerks make or break. Ultimately, the only way that you can really function this position is by having outstanding clerks, because they're the ones that basically allow for you to do the work that you need to do. But the trick is that the reason that the clerks are so critical is because, you have so many things that you're having to look at the same time that you need a person who's able to kind of go through and help you pinpoint and find the specific parts of the transcript that you're interested in, and then find the specific parts of the legislation that you're interested in, and then find the specific areas of the rules of evidence that you have to look at. So I think, prospectively, I think that the best thing that the state can do to accommodate somebody who is blind or has another disability is just allow for them to have additional personnel. And I think when you do that, you're going to find that, we can function, in the same context and same capacity. The last thing that I'll say is that the reason that having an additional clerk really, I think, is imperative for me is, again, it's that time ratio. It's that 1 to 5. So basically, you need clerks that are able to have tremendous stamina and resilience, because you've got to kind of keep going. You know what I mean? You've got 6-7 days a week and we're in session that you have to work. So you have to have the personnel that are able to kind of keep up with your energy to kind of get through the material. But thank you for the question.
Thank you. Thank you, Justice. One question for Justice Gould. What are the kind of infrastructure that you would recommend? I know mobility is one of them. That's a challenge. I can tell you that in our Supreme Court in India, maybe just about 5 or 6 years ago, we built ramps for lawyers so that they could, use their wheelchair. But we still don't have ramps for judges, because one of the reasons is that we don't have judges who are differently abled. So, and toilets, washrooms, these are small things. So what, in your experience, would you suggest or recommend as infrastructure adjustments that need to be made?
Well, I can mention a few things that my court did for me that assisted me greatly. First of all, when I first started being a judge, with my MS, I could walk. I had no problem with canes getting up to my chamber. But finally, there came a time when I couldn't do that. I had to be in a wheelchair. And similarly, at the start, I could run my wheelchair and get through many areas. But finally, my hand died out, and I had to have someone else running the wheelchair. Well, U.S. courts, I don't know if India has this problem, but we have major issues of security because there, for some reason, are groups of people who don't like federal government or don't like federal judges. So things have to be kept safe. When I would come to park at my courthouse, I'd park in an underground facility that was secure. And then to get up to my chambers, I need to take judge elevator that the public had no access to jump into, and then get to a secure door and open up a door to get in the secure hall. Well, then I'd go to my chambers. I could do none of that myself, limited mobility. But the court was able to get me some electronic gadget that I could put on my keychain when I had a keychain and press button number 1 to open the door to get in the secure hallway to the courthouse, and then to my floor, press button number 2 get into my personal chambers. It's a suite of offices, and press number 3 for a bathroom. There was a private bathroom. And those things may sound trivial, but without them, I would have been dead in my tracks. So I appreciate it. And there came a time when I was not able to travel. Our court assigns cases remotely, and initially I used to fly to different cities in the western states of the U.S. for hearings. But there came a point where that was not possible. But my court accommodated me by letting me participate in hearings in these other cities, in San Francisco and Los Angeles, by video. So I've held all my hearings that were not in the Seattle courtroom by video since 2007. And I've had no difficulty doing that because of the IT resources. One thing is that it's much like the Michigan Supreme Court providing an extra law clerk. In my case, the federal courts don't have that system. But if a judge has a disability, they can get a personal assistant to help accommodate their disability. So for example, I couldn't take notes, but I could have a person hired who would sit in a conference room with me and take notes and type up a memo that I could view and modify electronically. Of course, I've got the latest Dragon verbal software, which lets me do that. And it's been very good. Because we're you on trying to develop
to introduce sonority upon the ma'am.
Anyway, that's what I have to say. I hope that comes up.
Yeah, thank you, Justice Gould. One question for Judge Jaggi. Justice Sikri had spoken about mindset change, right? Justice Bernstein had talked about attitudinal change. What I would like to ask you is that what was the attitude of those people who appeared before you in court, whether they were lawyers, whether they were litigants, whether they were witnesses. You also have occasionally law clerks, appearing in the court. What was their attitude in seeing, a judge who was differently abled and the first of its kind?
I'll take that question, sir. So the very first day, that takes me to the very first day when I walked in the courtroom. So I do remember many eyes were gazed, they were fixated at me and looking at me. But so far, I have not received any, I would say, the comment or the gaze, which I do remember as a lawyer. It fixated me the entire courtroom. That I would, let us say, a person next would look at me and would be there and would leave me outside the door. But I had outgrown that thing, because since child everyone used to look at me, and they used to. I have seen people nudging their elbows, but so far, when you sit on a dais, I'm on an elevated place. I have not observed anyone, but yes, at times I have seen that I have to put my foot down to the witnesses, that I will not take it lightly. So what I do for that is I keep my hands folded. This is, I think, all justices' pictures. That's what I've learned. So I keep my hands folded and they can see very well who I am and what it is like. But I have not had any nasty experience on that. But I would say that, yes, certainly we need to get rid of that gaze. Change of attitude is required a lot. As a lawyer, I have had bad experiences, but they are all part of learning. I've evolved on them, but not as a judge so far. So I would say that I've only been a judge for 2.5 years. So I still have to catch up on that if I would have any experience of that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Before I wind up, we're running terribly behind schedule. I would just like to make a few points. One is that, we talk about a legal regime. Right now, we have in most parts of the world, including in India, we have a legal regime which deals with persons who are differently abled. But really, the problem is of the implementation. Do we actually implement the laws that we have enacted? Are they in the spirit of the purpose of the enactment? What about the practices that are being followed? It's a whole range of thoughts, that cross my mind when I discuss laws pertaining to persons with, persons who are differently abled. And you see, one of the things is that because we are not in a position to give meaning to the laws that we enact, that we have judgments like we had last year, where a person was rejected or was unable to join the judicial service because his incapacity was to the extent of 40 to 50%, forgetting the fact that in that very state of Tamil Nadu, you have a judge who was appointed in 2009 who is 100% visually impaired. Now, from 2009, that's about 11 years, you've had this person who is visually impaired 100%, working as a judge. But now, in 2019, 10 years later, the Supreme Court says, well, if you're visually impaired to the extent of 40 to 50%, you cannot become a judge. These are, areas that we need to look at very, very seriously. Where are we going in our, in enacting the laws? And if we think that we are enacting good laws, where are we, going in terms of implementing those laws in practice? That is one. The second thing that I would like to say is that, attitudes need to change. Now, that can be done through sensitization. Sensitization of society is one, but sensitization of judges is also important. We tend to think that, because this person is differently abled, he's not as good as I am, right? So therefore, treat him as a class apart. it can't work like that. When we talk about equality, we have to talk about equality in the real sense. So I think the judicial academies, need to get involved. We have judicial academies all over the world. In the United States, we have a wonderful federal judicial academy. In India, we have judicial academies in every state. I think they need to take up the issues of persons who are differently abled. They do take up, issues of different categories of persons or different classes of persons. But for some reason, those who are differently abled have not so far, got into the scheme of things so far as the academies are concerned. So judicial education, I think, is very, very important insofar as attitudes are concerned amongst ourselves, our colleagues, and of course, when we talk about society as well. The third thing which I had asked Justice Gould about is of infrastructure. I think we need to look at that very, very seriously, particularly in India. Recently, there was a report that had come. I think it was a study perhaps done by some NGO or maybe by UNESCO, I'm not very sure, that there is a very large percentage, something like 20 million girls drop out of schools because of unhygienic conditions in the bathroom or in the washroom. 20 million girls. So infrastructure is a huge, huge problem. And we have not paid attention to the infrastructure needs of persons who are differently abled. Getting onto a bus, for example. We don't have buses, which can accommodate wheelchairs, right? So these are things I think we need to look at. I had mentioned about ramps not being available for persons who are on wheelchairs. Forget about bathrooms for differently abled persons. We need to look at that, and we need to have some kind of a policy decision taken in this regard. The fourth is, the policies itself. We need to, come and come together and discuss all these issues. Where are we going? What are we doing? Are we doing enough? Justice Gould asked, I think, a very, very important question. You should not ask, what is it they cannot do? The right question to ask is, what is it that they can do? We can't disqualify a person on the ground of saying that, listen, you can't read, because you're visually impaired, or you can't write, because you have some disability. That negative attitude has to go. The idea is, what is it that you can do? And you can do so many things. Justice Bernstein told us that they can do just about everything. So the whole, the policy has to be molded in a positive manner. Not that you cannot do this, but what is it that you can do? The answer to that is you can do just about everything. So let's make policies based on that premise. So really, it's a complete shift, that we need to, invite. And I'm very glad that, this discussion has taken place over the last 3 days. We've got, legal luminaries from the field of academics, from the field of lawyers. Many of them I know who are doing exceedingly well. Now today, a wonderful panel of judges. I think ILS has done a great service on this very momentous day, when we are discussing the rights of the disabled. I think it's a very momentous day, and I would request, ILS Pune to go ahead with this thing. Make your dream of having next year, a much bigger event than the event that you had today. It's a good start. It's a wonderful start. Carry on, and I'm sure we can all succeed. Thank you very much, and all the best to all of you, and greetings to everybody on this very important and momentous day. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Madan Lokur, sir, for your wonderful concluding remarks, which has given us important points to ponder upon and to take up this discussion further. Before we move to the fireside chat, the video sent by Justice Yaqub could be played. So we request all the audience to have a look at it.
Good morning, everybody, or good evening. I don't know what time this is going to be relayed. Professor Jain and all my wonderful friends in India who I know and don't know will be at the meeting. I'm sorry I cannot be there. It is a very important conference and I've agreed to answer certain questions. And my wife Anu will ask me the questions and I will answer them. So Anu, let's go.
It's sometimes said that a blind judge cannot assess witness demeanor or manage a court effectively.
Yeah, it is sometimes said, but there's a more basic problem. The more basic problem is that people think that people who have a disability can't think. So they think a blind person can't think, a person on a wheelchair can't think. So for example, I spoke to a guy on a wheelchair yesterday, and he said to me that he asks at a shop about the price of something, and he's with his wife, and they answer his wife. And that's not blindness, that's a person on a wheelchair. And of course, all people will ask my wife, does he take sugar? They will not ask me whether I take sugar or not. So basically, it's a more fundamental problem. And all these other reasons are excuses in one way or another. So let's get to the question of whether blind people can assess witnesses. Depending on how you assess them. It is wrong to assess witnesses by how much they shift in the witness box, how much they move around, whether they scratch their noses or not, and so on. Because I think those are all false indicators. A poor person who comes from a deep rural area will behave differently from a rich person. So very often, the lies are spoken by very sophisticated witnesses who have the command of the English language, who have the command of their demeanor, and who do it perfectly in a suit and tie. The way to assess witnesses is on the probability. Is what they say probable or not? Now, I have never had to assess a witness in court because I've been in the constitutional court where the assessment of witnesses who give evidence before you was not on. But when you cross-examine a witness, if you don't understand where the witness is, you can't cross-examine the witness properly. So the world will tell you that I was not a bad cross-examiner. And that was because I knew exactly from their tone of voice where the weakness in their evidence lay, and I attacked it straight away. So I think that any blind judge or judge with any disability would be able to. Of course, the blind judge has to work harder. It takes longer to read the paper. It takes longer to do things. But if you want to do it, you can.
How did you maintain the confidence of the bar in your mandate as a judge? Did you get lots of cynicism and pushbacks?
When I was a judge, I had no trouble at all. Because by the time I became a judge, I had been a lawyer for 25 years. I had been at the bar for 25 years. So they knew me as a practicing lawyer, as a practicing co-member of the bar. And I'm glad that I had a good reputation. And I do not think that anybody ever doubted whether I would make a good judge or not. My trouble started before that, when I was or wanted to be an attorney.
दोन बिलं आहेत एक तर हे एअर कंडिशनचं आणि एक मिस्त्रींचं घेऊन जाऊ हां म्हणजे तिकडेच करताय तर तुम्ही घेऊन जावं हे पण ठीक ठीक
By the time I got to the court, the legal profession as a whole knew me well, and there was no difficulty at all.
During hearings, Judges are normally required to synchronously read files. How did you manage it?
Well, I had a computer, but the constitutional court was very good to me because accommodation was very important. I had a computer which talked to me. I had a braille printer at my disposal in court, which cost the court at that time around 2.5 million rupees, which is a lot of money. They invested the money on me, and I read stuff on the braille, I read things on the computer, I had a machine, but it did take longer. And I must say that if I slept for more than 3 or 4 hours during any night when I was working at the court, it was a lot, because it does take blind people longer to read things.
What's your response to those who say that a judge with a disability will create too much of complications, need too much of help, and will not be able to cope with the tasks?
I think that as a general proposition, it's nonsense. It depends on the judge. If the judge concerned has a disability and has learned to cope with that disability, then that's fine. So the issue is not whether the person has a disability. The issue is, has the person learned to cope with it? And if the person has learned to cope with it, then it's fine. So the inquiry is not, can a person with disability do it? Of course a person with disability can, but has the person himself or herself learned to cope with their disability? And that, I think, is a major point.
And I think this is related to Professor Jain's final question about creating more ZACs.
Oh yes, I don't know that it is a good idea to create more ZACs. Everybody is different. Everybody is different from each other, and I'm sure that different people will add different people. You can't create people. I have been successful, it is true. It's been a difficult job. I've tried hard to do it, and I understand that people with disability will have some trouble getting it right, but they've all got to work hard to get it right. It's not about brilliance, it's about hard work. Thank you.
Thank you all. I would take this opportunity to thank all the speakers of this session, Justice Sikri, Justice Bernstein, Judge Gould, Judge Jaggi, Justice Madan Lokur, and Justice Zach Yaqub for their active participation and contribution to the session. Without further ado, I would like to immediately move on to the next part of the program, that is the fireside chat. So I would like to request Jain sir to give a brief introduction about this so that we can begin with the next
part. Thank you very much, Varsha. I beg pardon for to all the audience for a bit of delay. We are behind schedule by around half an hour. My apologies to Haben for having kept her waiting for this event. But let me tell you, when I was reading today the Q&A which Rahul had with Haben in the event at Oxford, I thought that it was a shame that I was not knowing such a personality. And I was myself motivated. I got motivated. On World Disabled Day, I came to know about my sister, Haben, whom I unflatteringly call the Helen Keller of the third millennium. So friends, those who are with us, you are going to have a treat because you are going to meet with a personality who has done wonders, and words are short to explain her achievements. And then I asked my wife very unwittingly, why Nobel Committee does not think novelly? If you can give a Nobel award to a girl from Pakistan for bringing peace, which is commendable, what about thinking of persons with disabilities like Haben who are creating new ideas? I think just as generation of missiles is important, creation of new ideas is equally important. Without creation, without conceiving, you cannot generate. So friends, we have a personality who visited President Barack Obama during the 25th anniversary of ADA, who has written her autobiography at such a young age. I still wonder what I should write in my autobiography at the age of 50. Very enviable. And we have a personality, friends, a first deafblind woman probably around the world, who must have become graduate from as a wonderful and esteemed university as University of Harvard. And I think the saga of Haben's success does not stop at Harvard. How she's engaged as an activist, as a lawyer to help people with disability win their cases, help people with disability vindicate their rights. So Haben, I salute you, and I think it is more than coincidence, and it is a big fortune of Law College that we are having you on a momentous day like Persons World Disability. Really, you are a motivator, you are an inspirer for all of us, persons with disability included. So thank you very much. And I would request Rahul to start the discussion, and then we have questions too, which we will. And if anyone from audience wants to have one or two questions, because we have very little time, I think around 15 to 20 minutes, or at the most half an hour. That too, depending upon the schedule of Haben. So thank you, Rahul. Can you please take forward?
Sure. Thanks very much, Professor Jain. Hi, Haben. It's very good to meet with you again. Let me briefly introduce for those who haven't yet read about her or are familiar with her career trajectory. So, as Professor Jain mentioned, Haben became the first deafblind person to graduate from Harvard Law School. Before that, she did her undergraduate education at Lewis and Clark College. She's then worked as a disability rights activist and advocate. She was also a Skadden Fellow, which is a very prestigious disability rights fellowship in the US. And since then, she also then went on to release her memoirs, which has gained a lot of acclaim. And I've read it myself. It's called Haben, the Deafblind Woman Who Conquered Harvard Law. And it's a very moving account, very clear-eyed account of all the challenges that she's had to confront and the kind of skills that she's had to exhibit, and sort of her vision for how the world can better accommodate people with disabilities. So thanks very much, Haben, for joining us here today. Are you able to follow? Are you able to hear this? As in, kind of get this?
Hello, everyone. This is Haben speaking. I'm speaking with my own voice, and I'm going to start out with a visual description because I want to make sure this is fully accessible to blind and sighted attendees. I am sitting in my living room. There's a black sofa behind me. I'm wearing a black top and a mic on my dress. And people often ask me, how are you speaking if you are deafblind? Deafblindness is a spectrum, different levels of vision and hearing loss. Some people communicate by voice, some by sign language, some by using computers and typing. There are certain communities that dismiss my voice because it's a feminine, high-frequency voice. And that's not right. We need to create communities where all voices are valued, regardless of whether it's a feminine or masculine voice, whether it's an accent or whether they have used sign language instead of speech. And it's up to us to help do the work of removing barriers. So I'm speaking with my voice to find out what Rahul is saying. I'm using a Braille computer and I'm holding it up. So there's Braille dots along the bottom, and I run my fingers over the dots. They pop up as my assistant types. So he types when he hears Rahul, I read it in Braille and then respond by voice. There's a bit of a delay between when Rahul speaks and when I respond, and that's because the transcription is still coming through. But I will get to your questions, Rahul. I'm excited to be in conversation again.
Thanks very much, Habin. I'm sorry I had to slightly make a few logistical changes, which is why the slide lagged. Thanks very much for this.
Can I ask the first question?
Sure. Professor Jain would like to ask you a question, so I'll go later then.
Can you briefly describe your encounters and interactions in Harvard? How did you get there, and what were your experiences? And was there any negative experience also at Harvard?
Great question. So, a lot of people are surprised how a deaf-blind person would go to a difficult university like Harvard Law School. I did not jump into Harvard out of nowhere. First, I started in elementary school where I learned Braille, cane travel, and important blindness skills. You need to first develop those tools. And I was also learning reading, writing, mathematics. I had an excellent education, which formed the foundation that allowed me to later get to Harvard. So that continued through college, where I also had my blindness skills. My partnership with a seeing eye dog also helped. That's how I navigated the school campus, with partnership of my guide dog. The way guide dogs work, they don't exactly know where you want to go. You have to tell them forward, left, right. The blind person is always in charge. The blind person is leading the team. So I had all of these skills already before I came to Harvard. Then I went to Harvard, and surprisingly, they understood the law, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and they ensured that barriers were removed so I could fully participate in my classes, exams, internships, all aspects of the school program. The ballroom dance team. One must get exercise when they're in law school. So I had access to all different programs at the university.
Professor Jain, would you like to ask the next question?
Did you have any negative experience in Harvard? And what about socialization with friends? What about picking out with friends? Were your Harvard friends good to you?
It takes time to develop friendships. I value people who are committed to public service. So I joined clubs around public service, so social justice groups, and I met other people who shared my values, and that facilitated friendships. I also participated in groups like the Women's Law Group or the Black Law Students Association, and that helped create programming to allow me to build relationships. As a deaf person, I needed access to interpreters so I could have communication access. And there's some schools that actually tell deaf people, sorry, we're not going to provide you an interpreter, only in classes. And in some schools, not even in classes. But under the law in the US, deaf people need to have full access to programs at the university, including extracurricular programs, so I was able to have access to the social programs as well.
Last question from my side, although I would have loved to ask you so many other questions. But I was very excited to learn that you went to Male to build a school, helping an organization to build a school, and you were able to convince your parents to go that far. So, how were your experiences in Mali when you were building the school?
So my parents did not want me to go to Mali and build a school because they were concerned for my safety. They said, there's snakes, there's malaria, you'll be kidnapped, it's not safe. But really what they were scared of was how would their blind and deaf daughter survive without them? They were scared to let me go, just like lots of parents are scared to let their disabled child explore the world. So I told them, you know what? I don't know exactly how to build a school, and the American sighted students also don't know how to build a school. We'll learn together, we'll figure it out. And they eventually allowed me to go and travel to Mali with a volunteer program to build a school. The program manager showed me exactly where the device was to build the bricks, where the sieve was, so I could lift the shovel and dump the sand through the sieve to help make bricks. Or we dug up a pit to build a latrine so the students would have a bathroom. I participated in all of those programs because it was physical, and I could do that. I could physically do that. As soon as someone showed me what to do, then I could take it from there. After that experience, when I came back home to my parents in California, they had a little more confidence in my ability, but just a little. They're still my parents. They're always going to be nervous.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. That's extremely motivating and inspiring.
Speaking, I want to add that in the disability community, there's some stigma around the word inspiring and inspiration. There's a fear that sometimes people say inspiring when they're not really sure what to say. A lot of disabled kids grow up being told they're inspiring for tying their shoe, for brushing their teeth, for choosing to stay alive. And I'd love to have higher expectations for disabled kids and especially disabled adults. So when people say you're inspiring, my question is, what are you inspired to do? How about you, Rahul? What are you inspired to do?
No, I really, I paused after Professor Jain's comment because I knew you were going to respond to the inspiring term. Therefore, because having engaged with you about this issue, I was fairly confident you were going to say something along those lines.
Right, with full humility.
Yes. No, but I quite agree with you that there is.
You know me well.
Indeed. So I quite agree with you that there's a difference between using inspiring as a blanket term versus considering a particular action inspiring or something that inspires you to be an ally to a disabled person. I noticed that Judge Gould is also with us, so I just want to give him the opportunity, if he so chooses, to interact with Haben and ask him a question, only if he would like to.
Yes. Yes, thanks.
Yes.
I'm delighted to have the chance to offer a question up for Haben, who's achieved much already with more to come. My question is, Haben, if there were one or two books or essays or works that you would encourage us to read that relate to the challenges that other able, if I've got that term right, that I heard my colleagues saying, people people should focus on, what would those books or essays be?
So you are asking me, and I am 100% biased because I wrote a book specifically hoping to teach non-disabled people about ableism. Ableism is the root of many of the problems facing disabled people. Ableism is the assumption that disabled people are incompetent and inferior to non-disabled people. Ableism comes up in schools, in government, education, employment, in friendships and families. So I want people to learn to identify ableism when it comes up in all these different settings. And in my book, I share through stories examples of how ableism pops up in family settings, or how it appears in school, or how ableism intersects with sexism and racism and other forms of oppression. So I strongly encourage people to read the book, but Rahul did say that he enjoyed it. So it's not just me who's saying this.
Yes, I did, and it was in high demand last year when we did the Oxford Equality Lecture. A lot of people purchased it after the event. I must also mention that when I shared Habib's conversation with me with Judge Gould last year, the judge was so impressed by Habib that he in fact offered her a clerkship in his chambers. So it's quite an opportune moment for the two to interact with each other, and I'm very glad that we've been able to facilitate that.
Right. Can I add a comment? I just want to say that Hoppin will have a hearty welcome in Seattle if he ever wants to return to the Pacific Northwest.
Thank you. That was an incredible honor. I was so touched to get that email, and I'm glad Rahul connected us. I'm also a huge fan of Seattle. There's amazing coffee in Seattle.
And yes, and some nice mountains that you could climb.
So, Habib, one question that I have for you is one theme that has come up in our conversations in the last couple of days has been this notion of how in the legal profession some people feel, some lawyers with disabilities. For example, one of our speakers yesterday said that he realized that people, when given the choice, would choose an able-bodied lawyer over him because no one would prefer a disabled person when given the choice. You know, they would be better off having an able-bodied person because it would be less difficult and less complicated. So how would you respond to that kind of inhibition that someone might have, and also how a person can get that structural reality we need? So it's a question both for what the disabled person should do in this situation and what we can do to change that situation also.
I would respond by giving stories and examples of disabled lawyers being chosen and cherished and treasured by their clients. Everyone I work with chooses me and comes out of their way to work with me. That's an example. And if more disabled and non-disabled lawyers knew this, that would shift the stigma. That would shift how disabled lawyers are perceived, and more clients would gravitate towards talented lawyers, disabled or non-disabled.
Right. So you're essentially saying that it's a question of being able to put yourself out there and prove your capacity. And once you do that, people will begin to be drawn to you, and change will take place. Is that right?
To an extent, it's a matchmaking process. So you need to build up your talent as a disabled attorney, but you also have to find the community that will value you. I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area. I work heavily with tech and accessibility, and there are so many people here who are interested in this and value this. If I was living in rural Alaska, I may not have as many clients. So part of it is having a match between your talents and the community.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. Thanks for that. And then my last question to you is this. What would because this summit is specifically on legal professionals with disabilities, so what would your take-home message be for people who might be watching this, in terms of employers who might tomorrow have an employee, an associate in their law firm with a disability, or an intern, or a judge who might watch this and tomorrow might consider having a law clerk with a disability? What would your take-home message for them be?
So a lot of people, their first thought regarding disability is, oh, that must be so difficult. There must be so much extra work. And that completely blocks the talent initially. If you could switch your mindset to actually notice the talent, you will benefit in the long run, because you can open your firm or your law classes to more talented people. And back to your earlier questions about fearing clients would only prefer non-disabled attorneys, I have chosen to work in disability rights and advocacy. And there have been so many situations where a client felt only I could understand them because of my own experiences working in this field and the experiences I've developed in disability advocacy and disability law. So similarly, when disabled attorneys are working, and when they're working in other fields outside of disability law, they'll find people who value them for the specific talents they bring. So clients will recognize your talents. It takes time to get to that point, but if you're patient and persist, and the employers do the work of removing barriers, then you'll find an amazing community of clients who value you and colleagues of fellow attorneys who also value you.
Right. Thanks very much. That's really all I had for now. Thanks very much for all your answers. Is there anything more that you would like to say, or that you might like to ask us? How would you like to, what are your concluding reflections, if any?
Rahul, before you ask her to do that, can you ask if there are one or two questions from others?
Yes, please. Are there any audience Q&A questions?
Presently, there are no questions from the audience.
I see.
Ask her to.
Yeah, so there are no audience questions, Haben, at this stage. So would you mind sharing with us your concluding reflections today?
Absolutely. Here are my concluding remarks. If you feel inspired by this presentation, by the ideas I've shared, pick one barrier in your community and help do the work of removing that barrier. Sometimes as disabled attorneys, we tell ourselves, oh, it's just a small thing, I'll just tolerate this. It's just me. But if you let that barrier stay there, all the people who try to come after you, other disabled attorneys, or disabled clients coming to your office will struggle with that barrier. When you take the time to address a barrier, even a small barrier, you help all the people who come after you, and you make the community more inclusive. So I hope we could all choose at least one barrier to help remove, to make the community more inclusive.
Right. Thank you so much, Habin. It's been a joy to interact with you as ever, and we're very grateful to you for sharing those remarks.
On behalf of ILS company, I'm right now holding the chapter of the principal here. I'm also and really I enjoyed interaction with you, and I look forward to have more interaction with you. Really, thank you very much for taking out the time from your busy schedule and giving us wonderful thoughts.
Thank you, sir. Thank you,
You're
Habin.
very
Thank you,
welcome,
Habin.
Professor Jain.
Before
Thanks, everyone.
Yes, so before we close down this session, I would like to thank all the speakers for taking out time from their busy schedule for this summit and showing their commitment towards the cause of differently abled people. Justice A.K. Sikri, Justice Richard Bernstein, Justice Ronald Gould, Judge Jaggi, Justice Zach Yakub. Thank you all. I would also like to thank Justice Madan Lokur for wonderfully steering the entire discussion. My word of thanks also goes to Habin Girma for sharing her experiences with us and Rahul for coordinating the fireside chat. I also have to thank the management of Indian Law Society, Ms. Vaijayanti Joshi, Director, Academics and Administration, ILS Law College, Principal Dr. Sanjay Jain, the entire team of ILS, our collaborators for this entire 3-day event, that is Harvard Law School Project on Disability, Oxford Human Rights Hub, Center for Disability Studies, University of Leeds, London, publicity partners Bar and Bench, and media partners Addl. I thank all the participants for your active participation. Today we will be meeting again in the evening at 6 p.m. according to the Indian Standard Time for the keynote speech and the valedictory speech. See you all in the evening. Thank you one and all.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank
you, Judge Gould, for staying all the way through. I'm sure it must be quite late where you are.
Yes.
So we really appreciate that.
But I appreciate it.
Thank you, Judge Gould. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.